What is up, lovely PBO people? It is me, Mac, for your post Week 7 PRs, and of course, I'm joined by the lovely June.
Oh, my mic did pick that up. Hello.
Huge PR this time. We have 3 weeks to go over, and we're in the last week before playoffs. So lots of stuff to go over. So without further ado, let's just get right into it. Starting from the bottom as usual, we have Richmond Ragingbolts. So not a whole lot of team changes, so not a whole lot to talk about there. Urshifu single strike with the massive amount of kills it has as your leader. But I think over the last 3 weeks, you've had 3 losses, and they've all kind of shown common weaknesses of this team. You kind of bring very similar stuff every week for your Mons, which just allows teams that have more utility to kind of take advantage of that. But we still see great stuff. I mean, Urshifu single obviously is just a great Pokemon for you, and it might be one of those ones that you come back to in draft. I think if you draft a better support for Urshifu single strike, because you've shown to be able to use it really well. So that would be fun. Your week 1 matches, again, the similarity of bringing Galarian Moltres with the Nasty Plot agility set is really common. So seeing stuff like that. Registeel, I know you have a love for Registeel. But when you have certain things and you have really common synergies and really common sets that you bring over and over, it allows people to really prep against you. So for example, in week 1, you had that Clodsire that you went up against. And because they knew Moltres was going to be set up and they brought Unaware Curse, and it just kind of was able to sit and pop holes through your team. I will say, bringing Deoxys with screens and all that, it's a tricky hole to find yourself in with Deoxys screens, because it could very easily lose you turns that you could have used better to play more offensively, but it worked out. And as we keep going, you had Icirrus week 2, which is a really just hard matchup to begin with. The certain things, again, it's just how common are your sets are going to bring, and how well is your opponent going to be able to take advantage of that. Because like weakness policy, agility, Moltres showed up again. And as you get more variety in your sets, especially with like some of your offensive pieces, I think the success will start coming along the way. But I'm still excited to see how you end out through the season. I still believe that your matchup against Ottawa Donphans, it looks like a good matchup for both of you. So I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, I think what I'm about to say is what I said every week when it comes to Richmond. I think at this point, it's just realizing this team isn't really going anywhere and just kind of going along for the ride. I think that's where you're seeing the same sets every week, and while Urshifu has been doing it good, hasn't been able to carry. I think also maybe it's just a team of unfamiliarity, just not knowing how to make these mons work, and I feel like these mons don't really work well together, which all the things we said before in the past. I don't know what to add at this point, but I guess there's always next season.
Moving on to the next slot, we have Caborca Gengars. Again, same team, so this team hasn't had any changes in these 3 weeks. So nothing certain to say there. Same kind of issues we've had with the team since the beginning. Just there's good pieces here, and the team has improved since the beginning of the season, obviously. But it's just weird things here, like just the way things have been put together is always going to be a little funky on this team. Like Hawlucha is here, even though, again, we talked about all of this, right? Going into your weekly matches, you're coming off of a loss, a hard loss, a pretty good win, and then a really close loss. Especially against someone who is in the upper echelon of players for your division. So, like, obviously there's some comfort here with these mons. Into the season, really the hope is now the close out on a good note and kind of learn for next season. And I think a lot of the issues that you've had in this season isn't because of you as a player, but more so the team you ended up drafting. I think there's comfort in certain mons and there's a discomfort in some other ones. Going and looking at your week 2 match. Sorry, brain fart. Super strong match, like I said. It was a good showing for you. Bulk up Thundurus is always super fun. I love when notably like different attackers use different moves, but it's rough when you get so focused on one thing and then something like a crit happens. And I think it's hard to say, but there could have been a lot more of a like put yourself back together kind of. It's rough, but like you got to do what you got to do, and sometimes it happens. Don't beat yourself up on that. And finally, in your week 3 match, you seem to have a certain idea of mons you like to bring. I don't understand it, but I think it's valid, if that makes sense. Like, I don't understand the thought process, but I'm glad to see that there's a thought process there. So I'm excited to see what you do with some of these mons in week 8. I think it'll be a fun matchup as always. It's always fun to watch all of you players play. That goes for everyone. And I think some of these mons can bring some real power when you draft next season.
Yeah, I think just the one thing I noticed, I believe I have brought it up before, I think going into this next draft, next season, I think, like, I don't entirely hate all the pieces of this team, but I think you just need to compact it down more. Like, with your next draft, just make sure you have one goal you're working towards, because as we've said many times before, this team feels like it's trying to do like 50 different things with 50 different win cons, and it doesn't have the support for any of those win cons a lot of times. So yeah, I think just going into the next season, just try to compact your draft more and say, this is what I'm building toward.
I totally agree. Moving on to the next slot, we have the Chicago Chimchars. This one is a fall from grace a little bit. They're a really good team, and I still think it's a really good team. But as you can see, there's just been this last 3 weeks, these last 4 weeks, have just been this slow, like, fall off of games. And within the games, it's the, like I said, the mons you have work really well. It's just, it seems like the prep is, you're just kind of getting out prepped in a lot of areas, which is giving your opponents the edge to get these matches done. And it's sad to see, but don't let that discourage you, because I think the team was really good. I think a lot of your plays in most of these matches were still really good. And then sometimes it's just how the cookie crumbles, right? Sometimes it's just, you're not in the winning seat, you're not in the driver's seat anymore. But that being said, I'm excited to see next season. Like this, a draft like this again is always going to like pull attention towards it. And I think just the amount of prep your opponents do for your team and you as a player says a lot of how much power you're bringing to the table in these matches and how scary this team is. So I'm excited to see you draft another team again, because I definitely think that another season you could be like a first round playoff contender, right?
Yeah, I think Max on the head. I think his play also hasn't been the best. I forget what match it was, but I remember there was a pretty bad Terra on the Landers, or just a long time to Terra. But I think, like I said before, with Caborca, I forget who it was, but I think this team just feels a little bit more unfamiliar. This feels like someone who doesn't know how to take advantage of all these mons yet. Mm-hmm. And I think going into the next season again, as we're wrapping up, I do think Chicago will, like you said, has a really good shot next season. And I hope he gets, now they've used these mons, and maybe drafts him next season, he does a lot better. Because this team is really scary. It's a little sad to see this team fall so low.
Real quick for the Terras, week 1 was the Terra Water that just got Toxic stalled out. Which I get why it's Terra Water, because Hisuian Arcanine is super scary, as well as Gouging Fire. And then week 2, there was a Terra Dark against on the Dragonite to click U-turn after the Hatterene was already dead, and then you just lose your electric immunity. Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah, that's what it was. It was just I think overall it was bad. There was not a lot of reason to change typing there.
Yeah, I agree. Just because you have Terra doesn't mean you need to use it all the time.
Yeah.
Moving on is the Ottawa Donphans. So actually has been a really strong past 3 weeks. You're coming off of a loss most recently, but getting a win against Metronomers and Unowns, and both of them pretty good wins. Especially after like a few while of some rough games from the past 4 weeks. Team hasn't changed at all since the beginning of the season, which at some level I can respect. Of when you have a team that you personally like and you just rock out with it, and it was like, you know what, this is the team I enjoy. I don't know if I can make any trades that would make me enjoy a team more, so I'm just gonna bool out with it. Iron Bundle went crazy in some of these past couple weeks. You can tell that you're at the point now where you're understanding more of these mons and what they do, and so you're making better plays with them. Because Iron Bundle now at this point is at 10 kills, Chiyu's at 8, so which is what you would expect to see with Iron Bundle and Chiyu on the same team, right? Going into the matches of Uncertain Unknowns was close on week 1, and then a big 3-0 on week 6, which, again, I like the 1-0s are always such good games to watch, and this one was no exception, especially because that Iron Moth coming in and out and just having the pieces left towards the end of the game to be able to handle it is awesome. Pekrunt shows why Pekrunt is awesome with the Poison Puppeteer, getting a confusion at the end of the game with the Toxic and pulling it out for you in the end. And this is one of those games like where Iron Bundle really showed why it's such a strong Pokemon. It's coming out and it's just hitting so hard. Every single time it's hitting so hard, right? So I'm excited. I'm excited that these pieces are getting better play, and I'm excited if you draft them next season, if you decide, you know what, these pieces I enjoyed and I want them again next season, especially now that you're like getting to know them and maybe know better ways to support them when you draft, because that's the one thing I feel like was missing. If you had better pieces to support your Iron Bundle and your Chiyu, some like counterbalance to all those like heavy offensive special mons, I think like just from your showing experience with those mons, it would be so scary. Just so scary.
Yeah, I think Ottawa's team has always been on the scarier side, like you said. I think this season was just one of those ones where he kind of just couldn't get a win a lot of the times. And that's not like me saying he's bad or anything. It's just sometimes you have bad seasons, and that's not more to it. I think going into the next season, as I've been saying a lot, I think Ottawa's going to do perfectly fine. I hope he does really well, actually. I think he is a good player. Again, like I said, I think he just had an off season, which happens to the best of us. And you know, as long as he doesn't let it affect him too heavily, I think he's just going to be fine.
Moving on, next we have the Melbourne Metronomers. So no team changes since the beginning of the season. Still, this is another really strong team that you hate to see at this point. But like the team is still strong. I mean, you look at the Pokemon stats, and that Terra Greninja with 12 kills is crazy. Super, I guess, like Terra Greninja is just a crazy mon in general, but you've also been using it really well. You've been really pushing pedal to the metal a lot of the time. I think it started off a little slow at the beginning of the season with figuring out Terra Greninja, and I think that's a commonality that I'm gonna say a lot for a lot of these teams, is there's Pokemon that we've seen, and we've only seen their performance for these players get better and better as the season goes, because it's like you're locking in on what this Pokemon does on your team, right? It's like some players might draft up Terra Greninja and do the same thing you did of like, because normal Greninja you're just going to want to run Protean, right, over Battle Bond sometimes, but that Terra Battle Bond is just so oppressive, and especially when you have other threats on the team. Going into the week matches, you have a clean 2-0 week 7, and then against Ottawa and Columbus, you have 3-0s. That first one against, I mean, Conkeldurrs is just a scary team to go up against in general. It's one of those teams of you give them an inch, they take a mile because of the way their mons work. And it's just commonality you see a lot of. You seem to be getting outplayed and predicted, but not necessarily in a you bring like common sets. It's more so, it just seems like your opponents are putting in more prep time than you, and that might just be with the level you're comfortable with, and that's fine. But like I think next season, if you lock in and you draft a team like this again, you can go far. I mean, this team, you just copy and paste this team into next season, and I think you're gonna go crazy stupid with it.
Yeah, I mean, I am Bup's #1 biggest supporter, and his season technically isn't over yet. If he gets a good win over Lyrics, I believe he still has a shot. I hope he gets in, because, I love my boy Bup, but yeah, I know for a fact with this team, it was mostly just not knowing how most of these mons work for, like, being Bup's downfall, and just, he hasn't been making the best plays. I think he's been overthinking a lot, and it does suck, but I think if you just gotta steal your nerves a little bit more, is my suggestion, and just be in the moment and don't think about who's watching, or, like, if people are gonna say anything, just play the game. And like Max said, if you get a team like this again, like, this is a crazy team. This is one of those teams where I look at it, I'm like, how did this get drafted? How did all these mons be drafted together and be allowed? And it is sad to potentially see this team go, but yeah, I think Bob has it next season.
Yeah, that is a good point that I did not bring up. Of if you do win this week, there is a playoff chance. So definitely don't give up. And if I implied otherwise, I apologize. But like, definitely don't give up.
No.
Because this is like the perfect underdog story, like positioning. Moving on to the next team. This is just below top 8. So this Metronomers, and then everything above is like potential for playoffs, right? So now we have Carolina Cetitans is next. This team, fat team. Been the same going into week 5. And you're coming off of 2 pretty solid wins after a really, really close game against Icirrus, who is one of the tops of your divisions. So getting a close game like that, followed by 2 wins, is really, really good for you. And now you're in a position where you clean up the season well with a good diff, and you could easily slot into like a bottom position for playoffs. And your bulk with Amoonguss, Necrozma, Tower Skeledirge, Screamtail, Wish Support, Gastrodon could easily give you matchups. Going forward, recommendations for some of these matches is your bulk on your team. I feel like it's being played really fast. Like, it's being played very fast and loose. And as someone who loves playing with bulk, I'm a stall player through and through. The slower you take your matches, and the more methodical and the more you draw it out, especially against more offensive teams, like with things like hazards, throwing out statuses, throwing out different kinds of phasing, the more of these matches are going to turn into your favor, right? Because if you can pull these matches out to get everything a little bit low with all of like your utility pieces and your bulk, and just at that point, your bulk falls to the wayside. And all you need then is one cinch, like either setup or something really fast or a Scarfer to come in and clean. And I think if you position your mons like that, especially with some of the like more heavy offensive teams we see as we get higher into the draft, you could make some waves into playoffs. And I'd be super excited to see it because I love bulky teams. They're near and dear to my heart. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, like Max been saying, team's super bulky. It's kind of insane. Yeah, I think this team still has a shot at playoffs, and I think it will be very interesting to see if it, like, how far it can go if it does, because I do think this is a little bit of a sleeper team. I do think a lot of the pieces are there. I think there are flaws, like Max said, but this is, now that I'm like had time to think about it, going through all these weeks, this is a decently scary team. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Just it's always when you fight these things that have big walls.
Yeah.
It's always how fast can I break through it, and how fast do I need to break through it? Near and dear to my heart, for sure. moving on, now we have the first of, at this time, at the end of week 7, they are just getting into playoffs now. And to start that off, we have King Keldeos. We did have a trade from week 7, or going into week 7, to pick up Arcanine Hisui, who I believe is your Terra, correct?
No, B changed Terra. Oh yeah. So
Yeah.
he swapped out Torcat and then changed the Terra to Harkonnens.
Yep.
That's what it was.
Which is such a scare. Orgerpon Teal and Hisui and Arcanine are so scary offensively as Terra captains, because neither of them tear into anything other than their stab, right? And they just click a stab button and go crazy. You're coming off of week 5. You have a 2-0 win against Chicago Chimchars, and then a loss on week 6 and 7. It's especially interesting to see the loss against Carolina Cetitans, because that loss was for leaderboard-wise. It brought them a little bit closer, both of you guys, to like a little bit closer to that 8th position, which now it's going to be interesting. It's going to be one of those things of you might see them again in playoffs at this point, right? Like you might inch up one more and they inch up one more with you and you see them in playoffs. So it's especially interesting to go back and look over that match at what happened. Just because I think it was another situation where your Mon is obviously scary. I mean, Ivy Cudgel coming in and just destroying things. But it's the answers that they had for you in your specific offensive Mons with the bulk they had was really powerful. And it'll be interesting to see if that matchup comes back up again to how you're going to maneuver around some of those bulkier pieces, especially like that Skeledirge that got to +3 was super, super scary. So that'll be interesting to see. Week 2, your matchup against Uncertain Unknowns was interesting. It's interesting to say the least. Gouging Fire is such a strong Pokemon, but it has such a one note to it that unless you're like really investing into it, I think that's a commonality throughout a lot of your season with Gouging Fire, is that whenever you bring in like a bulkier Bulwark set for your team and like more of a support piece fire type dragon, because of its just defensive type chart is really good, I feel like you get farther with it than when you use it offensively. And I feel like as much as I love the Mon, you really, if you want to run it offensively, you need to go all in on giving it like Sun, Booster, Band, and just going all in on clicking fire type moves boosted in the Sun kind of thing. Otherwise, again, super interesting matchups, and you've really shown that you know how to use this team, especially with things like the Umbreon and the Great Tusk. Like, these Mons, you know them, right? So going into these playoffs, especially now where it's like tooth and nail, everyone's fighting for these last few spots, especially here at the bottom rung, and prepping for going into 3 weeks of playoffs, it's going to be super interesting to see what kind of like tech you pull out of your sleeve, right?
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight the point that you didn't necessarily skip over, but I just want to bring more attention to it, because I remember when we first looked at this team all the way back at the preseason power rankings, one of the complaints we had is this team doesn't really look that great defensively, so if it gets on the back foot, it might be hard for B to come back, and the Umbreon that B has been using has been putting in so much work. And I think we need an apology to B, because we were unfamiliar with your game.
For real, that Bulbasaur is the entirety of your defensive backbone, and it's a fantastic defensive backbone.
Yeah, the Umbreon has been putting in work every single week, has just been able to keep everything healthy, and I think that's really been helping with these games and making them so close and helping keep the playoff dreams alive.
Moving on now, we're going up to 7th. So we're inching forward now into playoffs. We have the Bulbasaurs. And to start this off, from week 4 through 6, what a fantastic run of getting these wins. Because you only got, like, from 4 through 6, you just kept getting, like, stronger as each week went. Like, you improved, you pick up a good win week 4, you get better on week 5, and then you go off on week 6 with a strong 5-0 victory. You lost against the Melbourne Metronomers on week 7, which is interesting to point out because you might see them in if they're able to inch out into playoffs. That's another matchup where you might be able to see them. So it might be worth going back over that match to see like what went wrong. And on your schedule last week, you're fighting King Keldeos, which this is probably one of, I would say personally, one of my most hype matchups. I didn't mention it with King Keldeos. I wanted to mention it here since now we're going over both teams. This matchup is really important for both of you, especially because of how close Melbourne and Carolinas both are to inching out into that bottom slot. It could very well, this is a determining playoff match for both of your teams. For like all four of you, like this matchup could determine who are those bottom slots in playoffs. So I'm super excited to see it because you've really, I will say personally, you have proven me wrong with this team. Because I didn't grade it very highly on the first 2 rounds of PRs we did. But now you're really showing that you can, like, this is a team that can make waves, which I don't think was ever a doubt because the team itself has really strong bonds. And it's more so like these weird synergies, but you're making them work and you're making it look good, right? Like if I didn't know any better, I'd think Bulbasaur is one of the best draft pickups of all time. Like with your performance recently.
Yeah, I think the strength that Boston has been really showing out with so far is just bringing these really weird sets, but they've been working out. Like week 1, I believe it was like Hyper Cutter, or it wasn't Poison Heal, or it wasn't Toxic Orb, Gliscor, which really just put you on the front, like put you in front so much for week 6 that, I mean, I think that game was over by the time like it barely got started. And knowing, bringing the Curse, Clodsire on Richmond, because you knew that this Moltres is gonna try to set up, and so you just go, no, I'm just gonna set up in your face, and now you have to deal with this, +5 Clodsire. I think, Boston has been showing up with the element of surprise, and I think it's been working out really well for him. But I do fear going into the playoffs that maybe these teams are starting to figure out his tricks and probably will capitalize. So if you're going against Boston in playoffs, if he makes playoffs, get ready for some weird sets.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on now, we're going up to number 6, which is none other than the Unowns. So still is another important matchup now I want to bring up for going into your week 8. You're here, you're not like bottom rung of these top 8, but you're low enough to where this matchup against one of the top of the bottom half could flip playoffs, right? Especially considering diff and your diff at being 3-4-4 and Carolina Cetitans being at 3-4-7. Like you could easily swap positions depending on how this goes. So another really hype match. Moving on to the games that have been played. So week 5, you have a really close match, and then you pick up a really good win against King Keldeos and a win against Richmond. And you're showing off a little bit about how you pick up the Landorus. Hey, I want to point that out. You pick up the Landorus drop, which I think going into week 6 and 7 has really kind of made waves because Ursaluna, I'll say it, I think Ursaluna is a bad mod. I don't like it. I think Ursaluna is a lot more on paper. It looks better, but it requires so much dedication that you kind of just end up putting all your eggs into that Ursaluna basket. Whereas Landers, especially for this team, has a lot more utility support you're giving to the team. That being said, as we go into playoffs, there was one replay that I wanted to point out in particular against week 6 matchup against King Keldeos here. Okay. Because in this matchup, there's this Whimsicott is just interesting on this team. I mean, you're using it in ways I wouldn't expect. I guess Charm is interesting. Charm, Protect, and Encore. And I think the point I want to bring up with that, Scatterbrain, the point I want to bring up with that specifically is that the mons you're bringing very hyper-specific to your enemy's teams, right? you're very fine-tuning all of the mons you're bringing because you need answers for certain mons, and you're making sure that even if this isn't a traditional answer, I'm using it as one and I'm making it work, which has been really impressive. And I think especially as we're going into playoffs, that's the type of plays that are going to keep you in playoffs and going to keep you pushing forward. Because as we go into playoffs, things are going to get more tight, things are going to get more competitive. And I think if you keep making those really specific additions to your team to counter really specific setups on a Pokemon, I think you have a very good shot.
Yeah. I mean, I know we talked about before with people maybe being unfamiliar with his teams. I think this is one of the first teams where Rex knows what he's doing with these mons, especially with that whimsical art. I believe he's the Pardini master. Yeah, I think Rex has just been, like you said, just putting in the work with the prep and just knowing what his opponent is bringing. And like you said, I think the Landorus has been doing really well. I mean, it was picked up in week 6, or week 5, and it already has 7 kills, which is insane. A lot, like Iron Hands has been on this team the entire time and has the same amount of kills as a mon you basically just picked up. So I do think Landorus was a great get for you. I think this team has a really good shot at making playoffs. Like you said, Rex just has been understanding the matchup so well and knowing what to do. But the most important question of all is, when are you bringing the Fampi?
That's true. If I see that Fampi in finals, like very finals, you get all the way and you bring the Fampi, I'm going to do a backflip.
Yeah. You will be promoted to Stargazer.
You can have the PBO. You can have the PBO. You can have it.
I don't know if Fampi gets fear strats, but imagine seeing a fear strat Fampi. Oh my god. Moving on to our next position is East Coast Krooks. Rain Team. This is another team that we have to give its flowers because we kind of underestimated at the beginning of the season. It was a Rain team, but it didn't have a lot of synergies. But over the season, you've made trades and you've made adjustments that have really brought this team up to snuff, to say. You have these pieces in Rain, but now you also have a team that doesn't need the Rain, right? You have, like, Zapdos, Excadrill are both really, like, I guess not surprise mods. I guess Excadrill specifically has been a huge surprise to see the work that it's been putting in for you. Especially, like, you have Excadrill on a Rain team, and it's picked up, since you've picked it up, 9 kills, which is more than your Darkrai, more than your Okidogi, more than your Barraskewda. So it's been super interesting to see these pieces that are atypical to the, like, strategy that you have on paper, and you're making them put in so much work. And I think the Rain, as the season has continued, you kind of felt more comfortable with the gimmick you're playing. You can see at the very beginning of week 1 and 2, you had super strong Rain matchups, and you really took advantage of that. And then weeks 3 through 6, you kind of had this stall period of you're in the middle, you're making adjustments, you're feeling things out, and now you're back to getting some super strong wins. And you're getting to the point where you're getting into playoffs, you're on a hot streak, you finally figure your team out, it looks like. So I'm super excited to see where you go with it.
Yeah. I think the point overall of the season with a lot of these top guys is just comfortability. I think Big Will over here has figured out his team. He knows all the pieces, he knows what to bring, he knows what to do. I think obviously Archaludon has been great, but I think picking up the Terra Okidogi was also great for your team as a really good Terra captain who doesn't necessarily need the Rain for him to pop off. You know, and like Mac has said, X has been doing really. When we first saw X on this team, I was a little unsure why it's here. But it's been proving the reason why it's here really well, and I think overall, I think this is just a good team. Like, there's not a lot more to it than that. I think the pieces work, and I don't have nothing more to say.
Moving on, next we have, going up is the Stoutlands. So Stoutlands, this is, like, what a streak of a season, Stoutlands. Like, clap and a half for you. You've had, like, a really strong showing against, like, opponents from every, like, placement on the spectrum of strength in your division, and you've made really good showings every single week. And I think a lot of that has to do, like, well, we've been saying it over and over again, but the comfort that people have with their Pokemon is what's going to give them an edge as the season continues. And I think you've shown that you might be one of the most comfortable with your teams. You use them really well. You use them consistently well. Like, it's not just week 1 you use them really well, and then week 2 they're consistently always putting in the work for you when you bring them. It feels like everything has a place, everything has a time, and everything is super specific to what you need it for in that week. On top of, surprising is the amount of times Cinderace with Court Change has been brought, and then also has done work you needed to. Like when you were up against that Klefki, and you were getting screens out the way, super huge play for you. And it's a heads-up play, like in hindsight, you're like, oh, obviously Court changed the screens. But I don't know if a lot of players would see that and then actually bring that to a matchup, especially instead of just clicking like high jump kick or pyro ball, right? So you're making these plays that are inching you these games, and it's been super exciting to see. Your next week matchup is important. You're going up against Melbourne Metronomers, who has a shot to get in playoffs. So you are acting kind of right now as a gatekeeper of, if you lose, as long as you don't lose badly, most likely you're still going to be in, right? You're not going to fall off into bottom half. But if you lose, you're potentially inviting in an opponent into the top 8, right? So I'm excited to see how that matchup goes. We might end up with because they might win just off matchup, you kind of do the whole thing of, I don't know how familiar you are, June, with players in the last week when they're cinched for playoffs, they bring kind of like only half serious sets with the intention of, I don't want potential playoff people to know what sets I'm bringing for our matchup, right?
Yeah. I'm not too sure if Lyrics would do that. I don't know if he's the type of player to do that, but he might. I never know. But yeah, oh, sorry, you go.
Yeah, all I was going to say is, regardless, this Week 8 match will be a joy to watch.
Yeah. Another point I brought up from someone else and I want to bring up here, and goes to the point of comfortability with Lyrics on this team. As I think this is another player who's been not afraid to bring those really weird sets. We brought up the Hyper Beam, Dig, Sylveon before. I forgot what week it was. I feel like I've seen special Samurott more than I've seen physical Samurott from Lyrics this season.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that just really goes to show how much Lyrics just knows his team like the back of his hand. How much he knows every mon's role, every mon's point. And I honestly think this is a sleeper team for like playoffs. This is we're definitely getting to the point of the teams that we could see win the entire season. And I think Lyrics has a good chance of being the overall winner.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't be surprised with the showing they've put on.
Yeah.
Moving on. Now I believe this is top 3.
Yep, top 3.
So with third, we have the Columbus Conkeldurrs. This team, we've said since week 1, is super scary. It's super well put together. And it's one of those teams where like you see the threats, you know what the threats are doing, but the support pieces are there to where you're not going to be able to fully prep for it for both of them. And as the weeks have been going, especially in the past weeks with that Salamence Moxie sweep, they've shown that even if you prep and you know what I'm bringing, you still have to deal with what I'm bringing, right? And with how overwhelming the offense is on this team, the setup offense, it's been such a treat to watch. Your matchup is going into this next week. You're pretty comfortably in playoffs. Like, there's not a whole lot of wiggle room. I feel like even if you lose this week, knock on wood,
Finished.
you still have a super.
Yeah, he's already played his game.
Has he?
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Then you're good. You're good. You're prepping for playoffs. So,
Yeah.
I'm super excited to see what you bring. Especially playoffs always have that situational of, we are going to go into playoffs, and I'm interested to see for this team specifically, a lot of the teams that you've played throughout the season, you're going to see in playoffs again, right? And a lot of them you've had wins over. So I'm excited to. Are you gonna try and counter prep any adjustments they make, or are you just gonna bring the same thing and just play it by ear, right? That's always the danger of when you're in a higher position like this and you have a lot of wins going playoffs against a lot of the people you won over, is they'll have the upper hand on a rematchup because they have the better view into what went wrong during the matchup, right? So I'm excited to see where this goes. I still, week 1, I said that I think you're going to be one of the 2 in finals. I'm still committing to that. I'm going to see you there. I know I am. So.
Yeah, I mean, Kato just has a super scary team. He's just a super scary player, or a super good player. And I don't think there's more to the story than that. He's just good with a good team, and that's one of the scariest things you could see. Whenever a good player wants to actually try, and maybe not draft some funny mons and just draft a team, this is the result you get. And I think Kato has a really good shot, like everyone else, of being the winner of the season. Moving on to subset.
Moving on to second place is Icirrus City Infernapes. Since the beginning of the season, super scary team. I mean, this team has consistently been top 3 every time we do these PRs, and there's a reason. Not only the team is well put together, the Terra captain is terrifying. You can see based on the 12 kills, 4 deaths throughout your games. On top of utility mons, bulk is really good, and you have this view into your team, and you've shown, again, that magic word, how comfortable you are at piloting the mons you have. The most interesting thing I want to point out is that in your week 7 and 8, you have losses, which losses, you're secure, it doesn't matter. But what's important is that they're 2 players that you are going to see in playoffs. Like, you maybe one of them will get knocked out before you see them, but at the very least, you are fighting one of these, potentially both of these, as you climb through playoffs. And, like I said, for Kowtow, you're in the advantageous position of being able to get a better peek on the matchup to see what went wrong. So you, I think, out of anyone on the top 8, have a very strong power position going into playoffs. You're at a position where you've kind of seen more of your enemy teams than they've seen of yours. And you have the really good synergies that you have. And you're a great player, right? So after getting this, just that little bit of an advantage might be enough to push you to win it all.
I do just want to say before we continue, because I know Aiden's going to say it if I do not. The loss against Kowtow was due to an unfortunate freak. Probably would have ended up with him winning. So, Chili Horse's buddy. But yeah, Aiden has been number 1 most of these weeks, and I don't think that's without reason. He's been playing super well, and again, has a super scary team. This team. And going back to Bup thing of, how did this team get drafted? How are all these really good mons together on a team? And no one else think, maybe I should grab one of these guys. And the fact that it's been allowed for this team to exist is just crazy. And yeah, I said it in the preseason power rankings that I think Aiden's gonna take it all, and I still believe that to my heart.
Moving on to the top 1, spoiler alert if you couldn't already tell, we have Timekeepers in first, rounding out going into playoffs. Between Timekeepers and Icirrus, it was super close. And Icirrus, between Icirrus and Timekeepers is above because the mons that they've made really good, and them winning the matchup against the person that they were competing for that top slot with. But, like I said with the team, I have to apologize of this Hatterene has actually been putting in really good work for you, and you seem to be more comfortable playing with it over playing with Terralandorus. And since you've made that pickup, it's just been like really, really easy for you to come in, do Hoopa things. Hatterene has been a great enabler of your team a lot. And it's just a scary Pokemon in general of being able to Terra and set up. It's one of those mons of like you have to have answers for. Even if it's just going to be a support set, you have to have answers for if it's not. And you've been taking advantage of that really well. Hoopa has been, since the very beginning of the season, Hoopa has been just such a threat. And you've been showing just how strong it is. I'm excited to see, as you keep going forward, what's going to end up happening. Like I said, you have the matchup over Icirrus, but it might come back to bite you. Oh, because like I said, I still firmly believe that a losing position against another playoff contender you're with going into playoffs is a stronger prep position than if you were to win, right? So I'm excited to see as you go forward, just exactly, because you're going to hit up, like you haven't fought Kowtow at all yet and his scary team, and you might end up running with them. Because of the schedule you've had, there are going to be a lot of these interesting matchups happening that we potentially didn't see during the season. I think a lot of these mons have, the regen core, you have the bulk and you have the offense necessary to deal with what a lot of these other teams have. I think there is a danger though with your removal. I think, especially when you're on a regen team, I think I've said this a lot, but when you're on a regen team, hazards are super scary, which Hatterene obviously helps with. So I think the longer these games are drawn out, and the more hazards that are allowed to go up if Hatterene goes down, I think is going to be interesting to see how you maneuver around that. Because I don't think you brought Cryogonal once. No, you brought it once. I apologize. Yeah. You did bring it once. So, as the playoffs keep going, and people are going to start hyper-analyzing teams, it's going to be so interesting to see how you do that in return, right?
Yeah. I think this team has become number one off the back. That this is a strong team, but it's definitely a team that takes a lot of a lot of game knowledge and ability to use, which is why we have it over Aiden, who normally is number one. Because, Timekeepers has been putting in a great performance. I remember when we were doing the preseason power rankings, I thought this team was going to be really bad. I thought this was like one of the worst teams in the division, and I was proved wrong. And as we see right here, he's number one. So I think Monkey has been playing super well, and I'm really excited to see how he goes into playoffs. I am curious if he fights Aiden in playoffs again, because week 8 was a metronome battle, so it wasn't really a game. And I'm curious how he does into actually fighting Aiden. But yeah, I think it's just been a mediocre rise for Monkey, and I think he's going to do great.
I agree. With that, before we wrap up, again, all of these teams, with your last weeks, if you've done them, if you haven't done them, it's been a super great season, especially from a personal standpoint. I don't know many of you, I think any of you, like at a personal level at all, before this season started. So it's been super fun to see all of you play and all the things you do. I'm super excited to see playoffs happen because I'm invested, right? I'm invested. I've been watching, I'm invested. And I'm super excited to see a lot of you return next season. And definitely do return next season. Even if you are on the lower things and you feel you had a rough season, every single player in Neon has been a joy to watch. And just been a joy of a person to be around in the server itself. I can say that fully. So, yeah, you guys rock.
Yeah, this season's been great, and I'm very excited for the next one.
Abso-freaking-lutely.